I'm Solomia Witvicka. This is TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to leave your comments. What did you find most interesting? Here are a few of today's topics. Yanukovych has spoken.
The partners from the EU side behaved during the negotiations, to put it mildly, in a rather inappropriate way.
For what purpose did the Russians pull a 75-year-old traitor out from under the bench? The suspected killer of Andriy Parubiy, who was detained in Khmelnytskyi region, is from Lviv and is 52 years old. This was reported by the Prosecutor General's office. The detainee has already been charged, and a motion is currently being prepared to the court regarding the selection of a preventive measure. Law enforcement officers say that the killer meticulously prepared the crime, monitored the politician, had an escape plan, and demonstrated remarkable cold-bloodedness. After firing 8 shots, the attacker made sure the victim was dead, and only then left the crime scene, according to the head of the National Police. According to him, the police and SBU officers identified the shooter's direct trail 24 hours after the murder and detained him 36 hours later. The farewell to Andriy Parubiy will take place today in Lviv at St. George's Cathedral. He will be buried tomorrow at noon at the Liberated cemetery. The former chairman of the Verkhovna Rada was shot dead on Saturday morning in Lviv, not far from his home. The politician did not have security, as he had already lost his status as a top official. The Russian connection is the main theory being considered by investigators. And all the details of the investigation into the murder of Member of Parliament and former Speaker Andriy Parubiy are being followed by TSN correspondent Marichka Kuzik. And right now she is near St. George's Cathedral, where the Parastas, the memorial service, is taking place, and we can find out everything live. Marichka, have many people come to pay their last respects and pray for the deceased? And is it already known when the preventive measure for the crime suspect will be chosen? The floor is yours.
Hello, Solomia. Right now we are near St. George's Cathedral, where the Parastas for the murdered Andriy Parubiy is taking place. There are also heightened security measures here, with many law enforcement officers, the bomb squad, and K9 units present. In fact, hundreds of people have come to the church. These are politicians, colleagues, friends, and simply Lviv residents who decided to pay their respects to the deceased. An honor guard is standing here. There are many flowers, and people are still coming up. A Lviv resident killed another person who fought for this country. That's why we need to support the family. A 52-year-old Lviv resident is suspected of the murder. Law enforcement officers said that apparently he was not working alone and had accomplices. He had been following Andriy Parubiy and his daily routine for several months. The man did not have a permanent job. He did odd jobs, but he did not work as a courier. The courier's outfit was used as a disguise. Most likely, police suggest the murder of Andriy Parubiy was ordered by Russia.
There were certain circumstances under which he committed this murder. We don't want to give details about why or what the motive was. First of all, this crime was not spontaneous. It was meticulously and thoroughly planned. We firmly believe that the extensive preparation, the precise approach, and the subsequent getaway involved a considerable amount of time, certainly extending beyond just a single month. We are also convinced, of course, that there exists some crucial information regarding the specific individuals who meticulously instructed this person to carry out these actions. We do not rule out the possibility of a Russian connection, that this was an order from the Russian Federation.
Whether the detainee has confessed to the crime, law enforcement is not saying yet in the interests of the investigation. Although some media outlets report that there is a confession, and allegedly the man began to contact enemy intelligence services when he was searching for the son of a serviceman who went missing. But I repeat, this information has not been officially confirmed. Law enforcement also has not reported whether they have found the weapon that was used in the shooting. Let me remind you, on Saturday, Andriy Parubiy was killed on Yefremova Street in Lviv, right in broad daylight. He lived in a lane just a few hundred meters from the scene of the attack. The killer was dressed as a delivery courier. He approached Andriy Parubiy from behind, fired 8 shots at point-blank range, checked to see if the victim was dead, hid the weapon in a bag, and began to flee. Andriy Parubiy will be buried tomorrow at the Liberated cemetery. And as has already become known, tomorrow they are expected to choose a preventive measure for the suspect in the murder of Andriy Parubiy. Solomia.
Thank you, Marichka, for the details. TSN correspondent Marichka Kuzik was just live with us from Lviv. And from Marichka, we learned that tomorrow a preventive measure will be chosen for the suspect in the murder of Andriy Parubiy. The military have liberated the village of Novoekonomichne in the Donetsk region. The General Staff noted that it took the military 2 weeks to accomplish this. Fighters from the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skelya entered the settlement and raised the Ukrainian flag there. And the ghosts struck Russian military equipment in temporarily occupied Crimea. The main intelligence directorate showed how it destroys enemy targets. Drones struck 2 Mi-8 helicopters in Fardiiske near Simferopol, and this means losses for the invader of up to $30 million. And already in the Bay of Sevastopol, after an airstrike by Ukrainian military intelligence, a Russian military tugboat was hit. It is known that it is part of the enemy's underwater sabotage forces. Macron invited European leaders to Paris for talks on Ukraine. The leaders of the European Union countries who are meeting with US President Donald Trump in Washington will gather at the Élysée Palace on September 4th to hold talks. This was reported by the Financial Times, citing 3 diplomats familiar with the plans. And among those who are definitely expected to attend are German Chancellor Merkel, UK Prime Minister Starmer, NATO Secretary General Rutte, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Ukraine has also convened an extraordinary meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council in Brussels due to the recent massive air attacks by Russia. Foreign Minister Andriy Parubiy stated that Kyiv expects the meeting to focus on a targeted discussion of joint steps for an adequate response to Russia's rejection of peace efforts and the escalation of terror against Ukrainians. Ursula von der Leyen's plane was reportedly subjected to Russian GPS jamming. The president of the European Commission was flying to Plovdiv from Warsaw to meet with Bulgarian Prime Minister Rosen Jelyaskov, as well as to visit a munitions factory. The Financial Times reports that during the approach to the airport, electronic navigation systems disappeared. The aircraft carrying von der Leyen circled over the city for an hour, after which the pilot decided to land manually using paper maps. Fortunately, there were no incidents, but according to 3 informed officials, the incident is being considered as a Russian interference operation, and this has already been officially confirmed by the Bulgarian authorities. An important force in promoting a new type of international relations. This is how Chinese leader Xi Jinping described the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, at the summit hosted in China as he shook hands with Indian Prime Minister Modi, who had been offended by Trump, as well as with dictators Putin and Lukashenko. For China, this is the biggest diplomatic event of the year, which, not without Putin's efforts, turned into an anti-NATO manifesto. 20 heads of state and 8 international organizations gathered there. And although in his opening speech Xi Jinping called on partners, I quote, to resist the Cold War mentality and bloc confrontation, end quote, it was precisely the strengthening of a bloc to oppose the United States and its partners that took place at this summit. Putin, who, by the way, came to China for as many as 4 days, once again justified the invasion of Ukraine there. Immediately after the end of the SCO summit, China will hold a grand military parade dedicated to the anniversary of the end of World War II to demonstrate its military might. And guests who are not yet members of the Shanghai Organization were also expected to attend. One of the most important guests was supposed to be Prabowo Subianto, the president of Indonesia, the world's 4th most populous country and a member of the G20. But at the last moment, Prabowo cancelled his trip due to unprecedentedly large and fierce demonstrations in the country. What caused these protests and how China is trying to help suppress them will be explained by TSN correspondent Jana Slisarchuk, who recently visited Indonesia.
This is how Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto celebrated the grand parade marking the 80th anniversary of independence. But just 10 days later, the country was shaken by protests unseen in recent years. The TSN film crew saw the reasons for this with their own eyes in Jakarta at the beginning of August. In a country that is part of the G20, the world's most powerful economies, the standard of living is very low.
In Jakarta, a normal salary is $300.
Against this backdrop, the trigger for the protest was a parliamentary innovation that increased the budget for maintaining members of parliament. Now, the latest local details are being shared with us via video link by Indonesia expert Anton Galushka Dayakin.
There are 3 main reasons. The first is rampant corruption. Secondly, the economic situation in the country. Just in the past year, for example, prices have risen by about 30%, while the minimum wage has increased by only 1.5%. And what triggered it all was when the issue of raising teachers' salaries came up, and both the government and parliament said there was no money for that. And within just a few short days, the parliament swiftly passes an official order to add a substantial bonus of 50 million local rupiah to their already quite considerable and significant salaries. That's about $3,000, a bonus for housing rent.
At first, the protest did not go beyond Jakarta. Special forces units tried to disperse it. At one point, an armored vehicle drove straight at the people. For ethical reasons, we will not show this video in its entirety. But here is the moment when it runs over a 21-year-old guy, the sole breadwinner of his family, who was just trying to deliver an order on his scooter and was passing through the crowd. As if not noticing his crime, the driver keeps going. The video spreads widely across the internet and sparks furious outrage throughout the country. Protesters set fire to government buildings of local administrations and break into several deputies' homes, showing off the local pshonka style.
They also love gold, stucco, and everything else. At the moment, this is a universal global trend.
The president's apology has the opposite effect. The protest only intensifies. And just 2 days later, Subianto cancels a crucial trip to China for the parade marking the end of World War II. On Sunday, he calls an emergency meeting. The deputies travel there in other people's cars, hiding from the public. As a result, the president promises to cancel everything that people disliked from the very beginning, including the deputies' bonus, which is 10 times higher than the average salary in Jakarta.
The leaders of the House of Representatives announced that they are cancelling several parliamentary provisions, including allocated funding for deputies, and are also introducing a moratorium on overseas work trips.
What can't be fixed at an emergency meeting? The death of a person under the wheels of an armored vehicle in downtown Jakarta. Prabowo Subianto understands this perfectly well, which is why his promises are accompanied by thinly veiled threats.
I have ordered the police and the Indonesian armed forces to take all possible measures against those who destroy public institutions or break into other people's homes.
By removing the deputies' bonuses, the government did not eliminate the root cause of the outrage.
But no one said that teachers' salaries would be raised.
Government institutions in Jakarta and other major cities are now under heightened military protection. And the Chinese social network TikTok, which is incredibly popular in Indonesia, is suspending live broadcasts in the country to deprive protesters of their most natural way to see what is happening in real time. Yana Slisarchuk, Roman Sishchenko, Anatoly Korob, TSN 1+1.
Viktor Yanukovych has appeared in public for the first time in a long while with a propagandist message. When and how the video was recorded and whether it is authentic is not known for certain. In the video, the 75-year-old fugitive president appears with noticeable changes in his appearance and speech. Some social media users have noted the politician's pearly white teeth. In his address, Yanukovych claimed that he had supposedly worked purposefully to bring Ukraine closer to the EU, but that the Europeans behaved inappropriately and displayed arrogance. As for NATO, however, Yanukovych was allegedly categorically opposed because, according to him, Kyiv's accession to the alliance would have been a catastrophe and a direct path to civil war. This entire address was directed at Vladimir Putin, who today at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit stated that one of the reasons, I quote, for the crisis in Ukraine was the West's attempts to draw Ukraine into NATO. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War believe that the Kremlin has now launched a multi-pronged information campaign aimed at undermining support for Ukraine and the participation of European partners in the peace process. In particular, they have based this campaign on 3 main lines. The first is accusing European countries of prolonging the war in Ukraine. The second is issuing nuclear threats against Western countries. And the third claim is the inevitability of Russia's victory in Ukraine. One of the goals of such Moscow propaganda is to undermine the United States' trust in European governments.
Vladimir Vladimirovich is absolutely right. Indeed, I deliberately worked towards bringing Ukraine closer to the European Union, ultimately setting the goal of Ukraine joining the European Union. However, the EU partners often behaved, to put it mildly, inappropriately during the negotiations. They did not show an understanding of the difficult economic situation in Ukraine. To be frank, they displayed arrogance.
Viktor Yanukovych was the president of Ukraine from 2009 to 2014. After the victory of the Revolution of Dignity, he fled to Russia. In Ukraine, he has been convicted on 2 counts, treason and aiding in waging an aggressive war. The Obolonsky District Court of Kyiv sentenced him to 13 years in prison. In March 2014, Yanukovych sent a letter to the Kremlin dictator Putin requesting that Russian troops be deployed to Ukraine. And this April, the Podilsky court of the capital found Yanukovych guilty of organizing the illegal transfer of persons across the state border and inciting desertion. That's 15 years behind bars. I should note that Viktor Yanukovych has been familiar with crime since his youth. 17-year-old Vitya was convicted of robbery. Well, and just 3 years later, Yanukovych was sentenced for causing moderate bodily harm. So why has Russia now dragged Yanukovych out of oblivion? Write your version in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.